So jack up the ratings and bring back the draft because the empire is rotting from the inside out. That was an excerpt from the new Lamb of God album, Into Oblivion, and as you guys know, here on Research Reality, we review the lyrics of protest music to see how they relate, how they contribute to this culture of resistance, which Lamb of God is certainly no stranger to. So if you guys want to help support protest music, like and subscribe. If you like the vibe, leave a comment down below about what you thought of this album, what you thought of this review, and yeah, let's get right into it with the first track, the title track, Into Oblivion. Here, Randy is screaming about being a harbinger, the face of chaos, of war, of distraction, the one who makes you retreat into a well-polished lie, making you avert your eyes, forcing you to live in this distortion, because in this age of conspiracy, he is the face of tyranny, using suppression and aggression to force the collision of fiction into reality, all of which will lead you into oblivion. And being led into oblivion is certainly a recurring theme throughout the album, including the second track, Parasocial Christ, which is an absolute banger, showing line by line the faults of the internet, of the attention economy, and how essentially it's no longer rise and shine, it's now rise and kill the time by distracting ourselves with the glowing casket that is our phones. The countless hours of life wasted on the internet scrolling through short form content and the like, you can walk away from it, but your self-worth is still tied up in this hollow asset where there is no substance, there is no action, there is only the ongoing infection of the viral metric racket. Everything is designed to keep you engaged, to keep you scrolling, to maintain a high engagement metric, and this racket perpetuates the wealth of those who control the mechanisms themselves, those who control the social media platforms, leaving you addicted to this parasocial Christ, where you rise in the morning just to kill the time, just to waste your life away. Me included! I didn't realize I was going to be attacked this early in the morning. So for the third track, Sepsis, I keep going back and forth on what this track is actually about. If you guys have a better read on this one in particular, definitely let me know in the comments down below. But ultimately, starting at the end, Randy is claiming that we are in a cult, a death cult, cursing the populists, those who say that it's us versus them, that it's us against the elites. And death here is personified as rising up from Mexico, which could be alluding to drugs, fentanyl in particular, or even just the cartels themselves, really just alluding to the overall brutality of the drug war. So overall, very interesting track, but not nearly as interesting as the next track, The Killing Floor. This one is all about bowing down to the butcher who is slaughtering your future, just ripping into the current state of American affairs, saying that the pendulum has swung too far and now it's to the point that we are escalating conflicts just to ignore the kompromat. Kompromat being a Russian term for compromising material that is used for blackmail. So starting foreign wars to ignore the Epstein files is really what this is saying. Operation Epic Fury, Operation Epstein files, you get the point. Then we have the line that we started the video with, jack up the ratings and bring back the draft because the empire is rotting from the inside out. As we know, this current administration is just obsessed with ratings, and not that we are in any real fear of bringing back the draft, but still, the possibility is always there. And considering that the majority of polls show that Americans think that the country is heading in the wrong direction, often for different reasons, but still, we are in agreement that things are not going the way that they should be. We all agree that there is way too much room for improvement, which is a massive understatement given the actual challenges that we are facing. So while the empire is rotting from the inside, we are now seeing strategic chaos being unleashed, creating a new world disorder that is now redrawing the borders. Overall, this track goes really hard, but especially at the end where it talks about a puppet god, a red Caesar rising, using propaganda as a way of forming cognitive dissonance among the masses. Definitely an album highlight, though maybe not quite my #1 recommended song from the album. Then we have the next song, El Vacio, or The Void, which I'm not gonna lie, I had to look this one up, and I'm really glad I did because someone over on Genius.com Bluesky.com did a really good annotation about what this song might be about. The first verse is a call for Lazarus to rise in Missouri with a bag of powder in his hand, saying that we need him so badly because the swine have overrun the land. And Lazarus in the New Testament was resurrected by Jesus, but allegedly in this song, Lazarus refers to Nathaniel Lyon, who was the first Union general to die in the American Civil War, and he was an outspoken critic of the secessionist movement, and he also had a quote that said, "It is no longer useful to appeal to reason, but to the sword." So the song is calling for his resurrection because we've reached the point that dialogue is no longer getting us anywhere. We need actual action. And the song also pays tribute to Dave Brockie, or Odorous, from the band Guar. So that's pretty cool. But for the next song, we have St. Catherine's Wheel, which for those who don't know, St. Catherine's Wheel was a medieval torture device where people would be tied down and then they would be bludgeoned to death by a giant wooden wheel, the more involved details of which I will leave for you to discover if you are so curious. But as the legend goes, St. Catherine was said to be executed by this wheel because she did not denounce her beliefs, and upon the first strike, the wheel actually broke, so she lived and was beheaded instead. But the song is really about lies versus truth and shifting perspectives. How the solutions to our problems are now expired because our brains are being overloaded and rewired, making us ineffective at fighting back. So whether it's facing our own demise at our own hands because of our comforts, both physical and digital, or even the bombardment of the 24-hour news cycle, or as Steve Bannon called it, muzzle velocity, we are too overwhelmed by both pleasure and pain that we are essentially taking a ride on St. Catherine's Wheel where every day it's just another hit. And we feel it more and more as time passes and as the consequences of our inactions become more dire. And as the song says, there are some that will bend the knee and there are some that will crack the whip, but fuck them all and close the ranks to watch the system rip. Which plays really nicely into the next track, Blunt Force Blues. This song describes a scene of chaos, of potentially some form of protest taking over a city, where the streets are set afire in a hateful celebration, and really beyond that, I can't really distinguish anything that contributes to the culture, so if you guys again have any thoughts on this song besides just what I previously mentioned, let me know in the comments. Anyways, going on to the next track, Bully. This one really deals with the concept of dancing with the devil, or really playing with fire until you get burned. When people actually get what they wanted, what they voted for, without realizing the actual consequences. As the song says, suckers are born everywhere. But the song also mentions how with the help of nepotism, you can incite a massacre and profit off the grift. Kind of like starting a war in the Middle East where your kids will then profit off of those defense contracts, most notably drone technology. Looking at you, Eric and Don Jr. Looking at you. And another key aspect of the song is describing someone hell-bent on revenge, which again is what the people voted for. It's what they wanted, and that was the initial deal with the devil, playing with fire. However, and this is crazy if this is true, there's another line that says, "But no one's untouchable, a third time's the fucking charm." Is that really saying what I think it's saying? Like, holy shit, if that's the case, that has to be one of the most hardcore lines in any Lamb of God song. They have other tracks that stand out in their discography, like Contractor comes to mind, a very pointed, scathing critique of American foreign policy, but this line in particular is just kinda crazy, but I digress. The second to last track, 1,000 Years, takes the perspective of a dark angel looking over humanity, watching all these wars unfold, watching us send our sons to war, watching the rivers run red with blood. But now, in the modern era, everything's ramping up, the world is turning to night, warfare is spreading, and now this dark angel is just waiting for its thirst to be quenched with the blood, because we can't stop our own destruction. And we're ending on a high note here with the final track, Devise, Destroy, because the lyrics of this track paint such an accurate picture of where we're sitting now, describing how we are living in this hostile, negative mentality where reciprocity is no longer active, where we no longer live in a world where we try to fix prior damages as a way of securing future relationships. It's only about how much damage can be dealt, and how individually we are becoming so self-absorbed, we're becoming so narcissistic that it's almost turning into a false serenity. We weaponize tragedies to use as talking points against one another, and how some of us profit from well-rehearsed catastrophes, like say a cop shooting an innocent person and then making a GoFundMe page, making hundreds of thousands of dollars for what? Emotional distress? But the song also touches on how we are utterly divided within our media echo chambers, that for some, it allows them to fully reject reality because a new reality has been constructed for them. But not only that, it also blinds them to the actual horrors that are taking place outside of their perspective, happening in actual reality. So people can look at the attacks on our democratic institutions, look at these giant corporate mergers, look at the waging of war, the consolidation of power, the tightening grip on the media where you can't criticize because then you won't have access, the rise of data centers and camps, and people will find justification for all of this because they are completely blind by the more sinister purpose, because their beliefs are so tainted that they think they're serving a higher purpose, but really, in actuality, they're serving a lower purpose of manipulation and divergence. And because people hold a ill-placed respect for authority, it allows those in power to devise and destroy all the roadblocks that are standing in their way, which only further consolidates their money, power, and influence. So we as a people must also devise and destroy the reins of power, the echo chambers that divide us, the apparatus that seeks to placate us into submission and then profit off of that manipulation. And that concludes the review of this new Lamb of God album, Into Oblivion. Overall, this album is definitely one of the higher end albums in their discography, again in terms of how it relates to the culture of resistance. If you guys only hear one track from the album, I definitely recommend the final track, Devise, Destroy. However, Parasocial Christ is really a close contender, so that one you really can't go wrong with. So while every track on the album does contribute to the culture, there are some tracks that hit well above their weight. There are some that are a little lower in terms of the overall messaging, but for how long they've been at this and how much they've already said, this album is really not holding anything back. I think in terms of the lyrics, these are definitely some of the best lyrics they've actually put out. Again, in terms of the culture, therefore, when it comes to scoring, I'm actually giving this an A 90%, because I think this album does a really good job of meeting the moment and again just calling out all the bullshit that's happening. So if you guys have heard this album, let me know what you thought of it in the comments down below. Let me know what you thought of this review. Let me know what albums or artists you want to see me review next. And as always guys, if you want to help support protest music, like and subscribe if you like the vibe. Check out the Patreon if you're so inclined. And until the next one guys, we will see you on the next one. So stay well, stay safe, stay informed, and we'll see you then.